In today's world of endless dating apps, superficial attraction and broken promises, men often ask a single burning question. Why do women truly choose to sleep with certain men while rejecting others? The answers you usually hear are shallow: looks, money, status, or charm. But the truth runs far deeper than that. To really understand female psychology, you have to step outside the cliches and enter the unconscious motives, the hidden layers of desire, and the unspoken rules that govern attraction. And to guide us into this, we turn to a surprising philosopher, Slavoj Žižek. Zizek has spent decades dissecting culture, desire, and the illusions of love. He argues that human intimacy is never simply about physicality. It's about fantasy, power, recognition, and the way desire is structured in the very gaps between what we say and what we actually want. For Zizek, relationships are never transparent. They are full of paradoxes, contradictions, and hidden motives that shape how men and women connect. So in this video, we will break down 4 hidden reasons women sleep with men, reasons that are rarely spoken aloud but which govern attraction on a deeper level. These insights will not only sharpen your understanding of female psychology, but also empower you to see intimacy from a philosophical perspective. Because once you know what's truly happening behind the surface, you stop being manipulated by appearances and start living with clarity, confidence, and strength. Let's begin. Part 1. The desire for recognition. The first hidden reason women sleep with men is not about pleasure in itself, but about recognition of their own desirability. Zizek often argues that human desire is not simply about objects, but about how we imagine others see us. In his words, we desire through the eyes of the other. What does this mean in the context of relationships? A woman may not sleep with a man because of raw passion, but because being desired by him validates her own sense of worth. The man becomes a mirror. By choosing him, by letting him in, she confirms to herself that she is still attractive, still powerful, still wanted. Think about it. How many times do people enter intimacy not because of deep love, but because of loneliness, insecurity, or the craving to feel significant again? In Zizek's psychoanalytic lens, the act itself becomes a stage where recognition plays out. It is less about the man himself and more about the reflection of herself in his desire. This is why you may sometimes see a woman sleep with a man she doesn't even like much, or one she knows has no future with her. To outside observers, it seems irrational, but to her, it fulfills that deeper psychological script. I am wanted. I still matter. I am still seen. Now here's the powerful insight for men. If you think attraction is only about what you can give externally, wealth, appearance, charm, you miss the truth. Often women are guided by invisible scripts of recognition. They may be with you not for who you are, but for how your desire makes them feel about themselves. Zizek would remind us, human relationships are never clean. They are full of contradictions. A woman can sleep with you while never really seeing you. She may only see her own reflection in your desire. That's the paradox. So the first hidden reason women sleep with men is not always passion, it's recognition. The momentary validation of their inner worth through the eyes of another. Part 2. The escape from boredom and routine. The second hidden reason women sleep with men lies in something we rarely admit: the escape from boredom. Zizek often speaks of how modern life is drenched in routines, empty repetitions, and the desperate search for something that feels real. Desire in this sense becomes not just about pleasure, but about breaking the monotony of life. For many women, sleeping with a man becomes a doorway into an alternative world. One where the repetition of work, obligations, or even stable relationships is disrupted. It's not just about him as a person. but about what he represents: escape, rebellion, freedom. This explains why some women will sleep with men who are bad for them. The cliché of the bad boy is not simply about his confidence or danger, but about the symbolic role he plays. He becomes the interruption to her normality. He is the storm that breaks the calm of daily life. Žižek would frame this in terms of fantasy. We don't just desire objects, he argues, we desire the disturbance that the object represents. To a woman, the man she chooses might not even be her type. But if he embodies the possibility of escape, of something different, he becomes a fantasy figure. The act of intimacy then becomes less about the physical exchange, and more about the symbolic rebellion it represents against boredom, duty, or even a predictable partner. And here's the harsh truth. Sometimes, a woman may sleep with a man not because she loves him, not because she sees a future, but because he offers her temporary liberation from the suffocating repetition of her life. In those moments, he is not a person. He is a symbol of freedom. For men, this is both a warning and a lesson. You must understand the role you may play in someone else's fantasy. Sometimes you are chosen not for who you are, but for what you represent. An escape hatch from monotony. The danger is when you confuse that role with real love or deep connection. Žižek often reminds us that fantasy is more powerful than reality, and that many relationships are sustained not by who we truly are, but by the fantasies we embody for others. If you do not see this clearly, you risk building your sense of worth on someone else's momentary need for escape. So the second hidden reason women sleep with men is this: to flee boredom, to rebel against routine, to step into the fantasy of freedom, even if only for a night. The third hidden reason women sleep with men is tied to something rarely discussed openly: the pursuit of power. Žižek often reminds us that desire is never neutral. It is always entangled with power, with the subtle dynamics of who dominates, who submits, and who holds control in a relationship. For many women, intimacy becomes a battlefield, not of violence but of psychological mastery. Sleeping with a man can paradoxically become a way of taking power over him. Why? Because sexuality is not only a gift, it is also a form of leverage. It creates vulnerability. It ties people together with invisible strings of expectation, guilt, or dependence. Think about it carefully. In countless relationships, the man imagines he is winning because he gained access to intimacy. But in reality, it is often the woman who has shifted the balance of power. She now controls his desire, his attention, his sense of accomplishment. Žižek would say this is the illusion of freedom and desire. You think you are free when you are actually trapped in the other's fantasy. Some women understand this intuitively. By giving themselves physically, they do not always lose something as men might imagine. Instead, they gain a position of power. The power to influence, to demand, to manipulate, or to test loyalty. Here lies the paradox. What appears to be surrender is sometimes the opposite. A woman may sleep with a man precisely to anchor him emotionally, to tilt the scales of dependency in her favor. He believes he is in control, but in truth he is now the one most at risk of losing, because he is invested, vulnerable, and exposed. The lesson here is clear. Never assume that intimacy automatically puts you in the position of strength. Žižek's philosophy shows us that what seems obvious is often reversed. Desire flips the script. What looks like surrender can, in fact, be domination. So the third hidden reason women sleep with men is power, not in a crude sense but in the subtle, psychological mastery that comes from binding a man through desire. Part 4. The pursuit of emotional storytelling. The fourth hidden reason women sleep with men lies in something Žižek would call the narrative function of desire. For him, Love and intimacy are never just physical. They are embedded in stories we tell ourselves. People don't merely live experiences. They live through fantasies, narratives, and imagined plots. For many women, intimacy is not only an act, but also a story. Sleeping with a man can become part of a larger emotional narrative. The romance of forbidden love, the excitement of a new beginning, the tragedy of betrayal, or the adventure of danger. The act is meaningful not just for itself, but because of the story it creates in her mind. This explains why women may sometimes sleep with men who are unavailable, complicated, or unsuitable. On the surface, it seems irrational, but on a deeper level it makes sense. Those men offer a dramatic story. They become characters in her personal novel. Intimacy, then, is less about him and more about the plot she is constructing around him. Žižek often emphasizes that we live inside fantasies more than we live inside reality. When a woman chooses a man, it is not always because of who he is objectively, but because of what role he plays in her internal drama. If he fits the script, the savior, the rebel, the dangerous stranger, she may be drawn to him regardless of his real qualities. For men, this insight is crucial. You may think she is choosing you for yourself, but in truth she may be choosing the story that you represent. You might be the lead actor in her narrative, but once the story no longer excites her, she may exit without warning. This is why so many men are blindsided when a woman seems deeply invested one moment, then distant the next. It is not necessarily that her feelings were fake. It's that the story reached its conclusion, and without the story, the attraction collapsed. So the fourth hidden reason women sleep with men is storytelling. The irresistible pull of turning intimacy into part of a larger emotional narrative. Part 5. The search for transcendence beyond the ordinary. The fifth hidden reason is perhaps the most profound: the search for transcendence. Zizek, drawing from Lacanian psychoanalysis, often explains that human desire is structured around something missing, something we cannot fully grasp. We chase moments that feel like they lift us out of the ordinary, moments that feel almost divine. For many women, sleeping with a man is not about physical release, not about validation, not about power, but about touching that rare feeling of transcendence, a break from normal life, an encounter that feels bigger than the self. In religious language, we could call this the sacred element of desire. In philosophical language, Žižek might call it the sublime. It is when intimacy feels like a glimpse of eternity, when the moment seems to dissolve the everyday and reveal something extraordinary. This explains why women sometimes speak of intimacy in spiritual terms, as a connection of souls, a merging of energies, or an experience of oneness. Whether those words are literal or metaphorical, they reflect a truth. For many, the act becomes meaningful only when it seems to transcend the flesh and touch something higher. But here's the paradox Žižek would warn us about. This transcendence is always fragile, always incomplete. The sublime moment quickly collapses back into reality. The illusion fades. The magic turns into routine. Yet it is precisely this impossibility of holding on to transcendence that keeps people chasing it again and again. So when a woman sleeps with a man seeking transcendence, she is not merely with him. She is searching through him for an experience that goes beyond him. He becomes a medium, a passage to something more than himself. For men, the lesson is profound. Do not assume that her intimacy with you is only about you. Sometimes, you are the vessel through which she is reaching for something beyond human limits. You are not the final object of desire. You are the doorway. Thus, the fifth hidden reason women sleep with men is transcendence. the desire to step out of the ordinary and touch the extraordinary, even if only for a fleeting instant. The sixth hidden reason women sleep with men is rooted in something Žižek draws from Freud and Lacan, the compulsion to repeat. Human beings are not purely rational. We are often caught in unconscious patterns that play out again and again, even when they hurt us. For many women, intimacy becomes a way of reenacting old stories, childhood wounds, past relationships, or unresolved conflicts. She may not consciously know why she is drawn to a certain type of man, but unconsciously, he represents the return of a familiar drama. Why does a woman keep choosing emotionally unavailable men? Why does she return to men who neglect or mistreat her? Žižek would explain this not as stupidity, but as the logic of repetition. People unconsciously repeat situations that mirror their original traumas, hoping, in some hidden way, to rewrite the ending. So when a woman sleeps with a man, it is sometimes not about him at all. It is about the ghost of her father's absence, the echo of her first heartbreak, or the unresolved pain of betrayal. She enters intimacy as if replaying a scene, testing whether this time it will turn out differently. This is why some men feel confused. Why does she keep going back to him? Or why does she stay with someone who clearly doesn't value her? The answer lies in repetition. She is not consciously choosing pain. She is unconsciously trapped in the cycle of repeating it. Žižek would call this the paradox of freedom. On the surface, she appears to choose, but in reality, her choices are dictated by an unconscious script written long before. Desire, then, is not liberation but entrapment. For men, the lesson here is critical. Do not mistake being chosen as proof of your superiority. Sometimes you are chosen because you fit into a woman's unconscious repetition. You may not be loved for yourself, but because you resemble the figure she cannot stop reenacting. So the sixth hidden reason women sleep with men is repetition, the unconscious drive to relive old wounds in the hope of resolving what can never be fully healed. Part 7. The illusion of freedom through desire. The seventh and final hidden reason is perhaps the most paradoxical, the illusion of freedom. Žižek often insists that in modern culture, we are told to be free, to enjoy without limits, to chase our desires as if they are proof of independence. But in truth, this pursuit often becomes its own form of slavery. For many women, sleeping with a man becomes a way of convincing themselves they are free, free from judgment, free from societal expectations, free from the weight of morality or tradition. Intimacy becomes a symbolic act of liberation. But here's the irony. What she believes is freedom may actually be another form of captivity. The choice to sleep with a man may feel like rebellion, but if it is driven by cultural pressure, the pressure to be empowered, the pressure to always be desirable, the pressure to prove she can choose whoever she wants, then it is not freedom at all. It is obedience to a hidden command. Žižek calls this the tyranny of enjoyment. Modern society tells us, you must enjoy, you must be liberated, you must fulfill your desires. But in chasing this illusion of freedom, people become more trapped than ever. So when a woman sleeps with a man under this illusion, it is not simply about him, nor even about herself. It is about proving something and that she is free, independent, unbound. Yet paradoxically, this very act proves how bound she actually is to cultural narratives of empowerment. For men, understanding this is powerful. Do not assume that intimacy is always personal. Sometimes you are not the destination. You are the symbol she uses to perform her freedom. In such cases, there is no depth, no lasting bond. There is only the fleeting illusion of choice. Thus, the seventh hidden reason women sleep with men is the illusion of freedom. the paradoxical attempt to escape control by acting out the very script society has given her. Ending. The hidden map of desire. Now that we have uncovered the 7 hidden reasons women sleep with men, recognition, escape from boredom, power, storytelling, transcendence, repetition, and the illusion of freedom, the picture becomes clearer. Intimacy is never just about the surface. It is never just about chemistry, looks, or charm. It is about psychology, fantasy, and unconscious drives that shape human relationships in ways we rarely admit. Žižek teaches us to see beyond appearances, to question the obvious, to recognize that desire is structured by illusions, fantasies, and contradictions. For men, this is not about blaming women or seeing intimacy as manipulation. It is about becoming awake to the hidden dynamics that govern attraction, awake to the ways you may be used as a symbol, a story, a mirror, or an escape. The lesson is simple but powerful. Do not be naive. Do not reduce intimacy to the surface level of pleasure or validation. And above all, do not give your power away by mistaking fantasy for reality. A strong man sees the hidden structures of desire. He does not get lost in them. He understands them, and from that understanding he lives with clarity and strength. So ask yourself, when someone desires you, what are they really desiring? You or the story you represent, you or the power they gain through you or the escape you symbolize. As Zizek would say, the truth of desire is always uncomfortable, but it is in facing that discomfort that we grow. Remember, the man who understands these hidden reasons cannot be controlled by them. He becomes free, and in that freedom, he finds not just success with women, but mastery over himself.